Okay, good morning. This is going to be True Voice, and this material is about asbestos. And it's not counted, but we'll read it right around 100, 120. And it actually is starting with a question. So anytime there's a speaker here, we're just going to read it as Q&A. Okay? On the record, any opinions that you have about him wearing gloves supplied by American Welding or cutting asbestos welding blankets comes from the interrogatory responses, correct?
That's right. It may also, I didn't look at Dr. Levy's report for that. I mean, if Levy interviewed him, which I don't remember if he actually interviewed him, I guess I should look and see. If Levy interviewed him, that would be other data. Let me look at that to answer that question. But go ahead, I'll look for that while we're talking.
Do you have an opinion as to whether there were welding blankets available in the 1960s and 1970s that did not contain asbestos?
There might have been. I just don't know.
Do you know one way or another what percentage or the amount, what percentage of such welding blankets, for example, contained asbestos versus did not contain asbestos?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Just, excuse me, Rick. It looks like Levy did see Mr. Bosco directly. So, you know, in that interview, if Mr. Bosco reported, welding blanket exposure, I'm looking to see if he did. That would be another source of information.
Let me ask it this way. Whether or not Mr. Bosco encountered a welding blanket that contained asbestos or did not contain asbestos, are you going to be the person that's going to state, yes or no, that the product contained asbestos?
No, I will probably be asked to assume that it did.
Okay. Same with respect to any gloves that he wore. Whether or not they were asbestos gloves or contained asbestos, will you be relying upon others for that opinion?
That's right. I mean, I would offer that, on a general basis. Asbestos gloves and welding blankets, I think, were widely used in the 60s and 70s, but I'm not going to be the product ID witness. I'm not going to provide the evidence as to what actually happened to Mr. Bosco.
Okay. With respect to wearing asbestos gloves, are you planning to offer any opinions as it relates to fiber levels of exposure from the wearing and using of asbestos gloves?
I mean, I could. I think the articles in the bibliographies that you have, some of those do report airborne fiber levels, and I, could mention those as examples of what's been reported.
What studies are you relying upon for that?
I think there's a Bamber study, 1970, that reports some values related to gauntlets. Samimi is one I talked about before. It has some data regarding gloves. I think Gibbs reports some data regarding gloves. Harry's reports some data regarding cloth, not specific to gloves. Millett did some, I think, unpublished work. I don't think it's published. He did some work regarding gloves. So, I mean, those are data points that I have that I think would relate to gloves and to some extent blankets. They're both forms of asbestos cloth, obviously somewhat different, but again, I think both of them are shown to release fairly significant amounts of airborne asbestos fiber with usage.
With respect to the gloves themselves, is there any particular activity that an individual has to do in order to release the asbestos fibers?
I think there has to be movement. If it's laying on the table, I wouldn't expect too much to happen. But I think just in the context of wearing them and the friction involved of picking up a hot piece of metal or whatever, lifting or holding, there's going to be some friction and some fiber release. And depending on how hard they do it and how worn the gloves are, and all of that will affect the release of fibers.
Okay. And do you have any opinions today as it relates to fiber levels associated with cutting the welding blankets that may or may not contain asbestos?
Cutting, let's see. I mean, there's a data point I see from cutting of 10 fibers per cc on an article, I think, from OSHA. I think I've seen lower levels of that from cutting cloth, so that would probably be somewhat at the high end. So I think, yes, I mean, I would say there's going to be some fiber release with cutting blankets or cloth.
The cutting of 10 fibers per cc. What article were you looking at to get that number?
This is a Hinkle. It says Hinkle from OSHA. I know I have others. I just can't remember the others because I think I've seen some others that are lower than that. I've seen a general level from ripping cloth. It's going to generate lower than the cutting. I have some fiber levels from Harry's on that. That's the best I can give you right now.
The Harry's article, is that the article 4 on your gloves, clothing, and blankets index?
I think so. Let me double check. It's 1971. Harry's 71. That's right.
You mentioned the Hinkle article that was something for OSHA. I don't see that anywhere. At least I'm not catching it on your gloves, clothing, and blankets article or index.
You're right. You're right about that. I don't have that on the index. It's from a table in the index, and I need to get that. I don't have the original on that either.
Do you happen to just have, for my reference, the full name of the article and the date, the year of the publication?
Yeah, the year. Let's see. It says 73. I'll have to look for that and see if I can find it.
And do you know the name of the article?
No, I don't.
Okay. If we can just go ahead and attach that Hinkle article as Exhibit 5, so we're all on the same page as to what it is once you find it.
Okay. If I can find it, I'll try.
All right. Any other opinions as it relates to American Welding Supply or Air Gas USA, LLC, with respect to exposures?
No.
Do you have opinions as to the level of exposure required to, in total, to cause asbestosis?
Well, in terms of fiber years,
Correct.
well, I mean, there's data out there. Certainly levels, I think, as low as 5 fiber years have been associated with asbestosis on the low end. some in that range. I mean, that's on the lower end of the range, but I don't have an absolute cutoff for you. I don't think that's actually been determined in the literature. I think I may have seen values as low as 2 fiber years associated with asbestosis or 3 fiber years. I don't think the absolute minimum has been conclusively established.
Do you have any opinions as to the fiber years of exposure that Mr. Bosco had to asbestos during his career?
No, I'm not going to do any dose reconstruction regarding him in total or any defendant or a job site. I think he had a lot of asbestos exposures as a machinist for, 20, 30 years, but I'm not going to try and put a number on it.
I want to ask you a few questions about Dr. Levy's report. If you have that in front of you.
Let me get it. Go ahead. I'll find it somewhere. Go ahead.
Do you know, upon review of his report, that Mr. Bosco had a number of cardiac issues?
Yes.
Are you going to be offering any opinions that his cardiac issues were caused by any potential lung disease that he has?
No, I'm not going to be opining about his medical status per se.
Okay. Do you have any opinions as to whether an inhaler, why someone could be prescribed an inhaler?
Well, I mean, sure, I have opinions about that, but I'm not going to be testifying about that.
Okay. Would you agree that Mr. Bosco's shortness of breath could be caused by his old age?
Gee, I hope not. I'm getting to be old. Shortness of breath just from being old? I've never heard that before. Shortness of breath just from being old. Usually there's a reason for it. Again, I'm not going to be discussing Mr. Bosco's symptoms or his medical condition.
I understand. Do you agree that shortness of breath can be caused by heart problems, including the atrial fibrillation that he has?
Well, your questions compound, and I agree with part of it and disagree with other parts of it. Again, I'm not going to be talking about causes of his symptoms or his other medical conditions as they contribute to his symptoms. I'm not going to discuss that.
Okay, that was a bit of extension for you guys. That was 13 and a half minutes. Okay, different material now. We've got some numbers in here, and actually we're going to do this a little bit faster. Let's read it in lines.
Okay.
On the record. What is your current salary?
Per month, I make about $5,000.
What is your yearly salary?
About $60,000 to $65,000, depending on bonuses.
What was your salary with your former employer?
I made about $52,000 a year.
How much did you pay for the house in Phoenix?
$225,000.
What year did you buy that house?
2001.
What did you pay for your current residence?
$350,000.
What year did you move to your current residence?
2009.
How many bedrooms in your current house?
3.
I see, 3 bedrooms and 3 baths.
No, 2 baths.
How much did you pay for your vehicle?
$30,000.
What was the amount of the sales tax charged on your vehicle?
$1,800.
When you purchased the washer and dryer, how much did you pay for them?
$1,200.
How much did the trip to Hawaii cost you?
About $3,150.
How much are you paying in child support each month?
$1,750.
How much are you paying in alimony each month?
About $2,375 per month.
How much do you have in your checking account?
$10,288.
How much are your annuities worth?
Over $399,000.
What is the amount of state disability you are receiving each month?
About $980.
What does your Social Security benefit come to each month?
$1,476.
What was the amount of your federal income tax refund?
$80.
What do you owe the government in state taxes?
About $112.
How much money did you loan your cousin?
$6,532.
What was the exact price of the dress?
$87.22.
How much were the shoes?
$51.05.
What is the sales tax rate in your state?
7.75%.
What was the magnitude of the earthquake?
On the Richter scale, about a 4.5 quake.
How hard was the wind blowing?
More than 70 miles per hour.
How far is Nashville from your home?
Less than 32 miles.
Did you put oil in the truck?
Yes, I put in 2 quarts.
How many panes does the window have?
It is a 4-pane window.
Did you buy stamps at the U.S. Post Office?
Yes, I bought 3 2-cent stamps, 20 44-cent stamps, and 3 10-cent stamps.
Did you fly first class on your trip to New York?
I flew first class.
Okay, we're going to repeat some of that and read it back because these numbers are so good to read back. And we're going to start there. We're going to read it in tens.
Okay.
10s or 11s. Okay, here we go. How much are your annuities worth?
Over $399,000.
What is the amount of state disability you are receiving each month?
About $980.
What does your Social Security benefit come to each month?
$1,476.
What was the amount of your federal income tax refund?
$80.
What do you owe the government in state taxes?
About $112.
How much money did you loan to your cousin?
$6,532.
What was the exact price of the dress?
$87.22.
How much were the shoes?
$51.05.
What is the sales tax rate in your state?
7.75%.
What was the magnitude of the earthquake?
On the Richter scale, about a 4.5 quake.
How hard was the wind blowing?
More than 70 miles per hour.
How far is Nashville from your home?
Less than 32 miles.
Did you put oil in the truck?
Yes, I put in 2 quarts.
How many panes does the window have?
It is a 4-pane window.
Did you buy stamps at the U.S. Post Office?
Yes, I bought 3 2-cent stamps, 20 44-cent stamps, and 3 10-cent stamps.
Did you fly first class on your trip to New York?
I flew first class.
Okay, this will be about 130, 135. Okay, on the record. So 9s. Ms. Jones, it is very important to be precise here, so I am going to ask you some clarifying questions. Is that okay with you?
Yes, it's okay with me.
Good. Now I want to nail down what happened at the door. Does the door go right out from the store into the street?
No, there is a sort of vestibule between the street door and the inside door.
Okay, then at which door did the incident occur? The door to the street or the door from the vestibule into the store?
It occurred inside of the store to the vestibule.
Just to be clear, are you saying the accident occurred at the door from the inside of the store to the vestibule?
Yes, that's where the accident happened.
As you approached the door, did it open?
Yes, it did.
From your perspective, was there anything unusual about the way the door opened?
No, not that I recall.
Now, after it opened, did you start to walk through it?
I did.
What happened next?
Instead of the door going to the right to exit out, it went to the left and hit me on my right arm and shoulder.
Now, let's back up for a second. Regarding how that particular door opens, does it open so that it swings away to your right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, now on the night in question, did the door open completely?
Yes,
To the best of your recollection, it did.
yes,
In other words, you would say that the door went from a completely closed position to a completely open position. Is that correct?
yes, it did. Instead of the door opening to the right to exit so I could leave, it went to the left and hit me on the arm and shoulder of my right side.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood you precisely. You mean the door opened normally?
Yes, the door opened as it always did.
Did it stay open?
It stayed open, but instead of the door swinging to the right for me to exit the store, it came back to the left and hit me on the right arm and right shoulder.
Okay, now bear with me for a moment. What I've got here so far is that the door is completely in an open position, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you were walking through the door while it was in this completely open position, correct?
When I started through the door, that's correct.
So the door did stay open in that position for some period of time?
Yes, for a very short period of time.
Could you estimate how long the door stayed in that fully open position?
Maybe a second.
Okay, and then what did the door do?
After about a second, instead of it opening to the right for me to exit out of the store, it swung back to the left and hit me on my left arm and shoulder.
So what you are saying is that the door did not stay open until you got through it. Have I got that right?
No, I mean, yes, you have got that right. The door did not stay open until I got through it.
Did it close completely?
It started to close as I was coming through the door.
After the door opened and stopped in an open position, how long did it stay in that position?
Approximately 1 second, or maybe a little less or a little more. I really couldn't judge such a small amount of time very accurately.
Okay, but in that 1 second or whatever amount of time the door actually stayed open, what were you doing?
I was on my way out the door because I thought the door was going to keep on going to the right. I had no idea it was going to swing back to the left.
As you were walking through the door, was it still opening or had it completely opened already?
It had completely opened already.
So, according to your best recollection, the door completely opened and stayed that way for approximately 1 second. Is that right?
Yes, that's about right. Although, as I said, I can't be precise about the exact amount of time.
But after that, the door started back in the other direction. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Now, during that second or so that the door was still, were you walking?
Yes, I was walking through the door.
Okay, now when the door started coming back toward you, where were you in comparison to the threshold of the door frame?
I was right at the threshold. I was over it.
Did you actually see the door begin to swing back at you?
I sure did, but it was a complete surprise. I was not expecting it.
When the door started swinging back toward you, what did you do?
I was just like paralyzed. I couldn't believe it.
Did you do anything?
I was just walking and it just hit me on my arm.
At the time that you started to see the door coming back or starting to close, did you continue to walk?
Yes, I continued walking toward the street.
Did the door actually strike you?
It most certainly did. It knocked my coffee cup out of my hand.
What part of the door struck your body?
The middle part of the door.
Just so we're clear, are you talking about the middle part of the outside edge of the door or the middle of the door panel itself?
The middle part of the outside edge of the door.
And where did it strike your body?
Right here on my right arm and on my shoulder.
Okay. Did the door strike you anywhere else?
No, it struck me on the right arm and shoulder only.
How many times did the door strike you?
Just the once, that's all. I was in so much pain.
Okay. Can you tell us what happened to your body after you were struck?
It seemed like my whole right arm and shoulder and the whole right side of my body was hurting and in pain.
When the door came into contact with your body, did the door stop or did you move backward? How did that work?
The door stopped right on my arm.
But you were still walking at that time, is that correct?
Yes, I was still walking.
Okay, here's one more. This time we're just going to go for, well, we might go for 6 minutes. Okay, reading in nines. On the record, would you please state and spell your name for the record?
My full name is Tony Shirk.
Mr. Shirk, have you ever given a deposition before?
No.
I am going to go through some of the basic rules here and make this go easy. The court reporter sitting next to me is taking down everything that you say today and what everybody in the room says in a written form. As a result of that, it makes the record much more clean if we don't talk over each other. So if you could let me finish the question, I will ask you a question before you start your answer.
Okay, thank you.
What is your current address?
16 Park Place, Newton, Indiana, 46341.
Do you plan on moving any time in the near future?
No.
What is your highest level of formal education?
2 years of college.
Did you attain a degree after 2 years?
No.
Where did you graduate high school?
Porter.
Have you had any post-high school formal training or other education besides the 2 years of college?
No.
I understand in this case that you were the safety director at Miller Roofing. Did you have any specific training or education related to safety issues?
Yes.
What was that?
There were several. One class would be on confined space. Another class would be on electrical hazards or arc hazards. Another class would be on fall protection.
Would those be classes that you took while you were employed at Miller Roofing?
Yes.
Were you the safety director anywhere else prior to Miller Roofing?
No.
After Miller Roofing?
No.
Have you ever been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor involving fraud or dishonesty?
No.
Did you serve in the military?
Yes.
What branch?
Army.
What was your form of discharge?
Honorable.
What year was that?
1977.
What was your MOS?
72 Echo.
And formally referred to as?
Well, I am a teletype operator.
So it was in communications?
Yes, I was signal corporal.
Okay.
Yes, it's formally signal corporal.
Did you review any documents or photographs in preparation for your deposition today?
Yes.
And what did you review?
Both documents and photos.
What documents did you review?
Witness statements, accident reports.
Were these statements and reports that you took?
Myself.
Where did you obtain those documents? If I may, those were at our office. They comprised the documents that were provided by Miller Group to Central Crane's notice of production, as well as production requests. So all the documents and the photographs that you reviewed in preparation for your deposition have been produced as a part of discovery.
Yes.
Okay, other than your attorney who is sitting here today, or anybody from his office, have you talked to anybody concerning your deposition?
No. Wait a minute. Yes, I did. I did talk to Mr. Peterson and let him know that my deposition was today.
When did you speak to Mr. Peterson?
Yesterday.
And what was said?
I just told him that I was coming in today for the deposition. That was it.
And what did he say?
Okay.
Did he tell you anything about what's going on in the case?
No.
Did he tell you anything about his testimony?
No.
When did you begin working for Miller Group?
It was 5 years ago. My last day there was December the 28th of last year. So it was exactly 5 years before. It was September, I believe.
What was your position when you joined Miller Group?
Actually, I was his driver. He is legally blind.
So you were originally hired to be Mr. Peterson's driver?
Correct.
Okay, I understand that the Miller Group consists of multiple entities. Did you work for a particular one of those entities, or I should say divisions?
Later, all of them, being the safety director, the roofing division, and the sheeting division.
Okay, that's it for the warm-up today.